your mindset when you break ground is 150% just get to the finish and let's go. But as I kind of start to build the pieces that we want at the assistant level, at the equipment manager level, and so on and so forth, that's something that really for me has taken up a lot of headspace in how I look at things. Is, when we open, I want to be the ambassador for our team. I want to go to members and say, hey man, good morning, how are you? Welcome to Old Sawmill. Hey, is there anything we can help you with? And then talk to them after they're around and say, hey man, I'm a pretty personable guy. I don't, I'm not too politically correct all the time. Definitely at the end of the round, go, hey, is there something, I can pass on to my team, that good or bad, be honest. That's where I want to go in my career.
Welcome to Leadership on the Links, the podcast that showcases innovators in golf course management and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tyler Bloom. In Leadership on the Links, you hear the stories of people shaping the industry from their first swing to their dream match. You feel like you're on the course playing with your most inspiring colleagues, having great conversations, digging into insights and sharing a few laughs. Our industry is changing. As a leader, you need to keep up on everything from trends to technology to best practices. Together, we'll continue to build world-class clubs and teams. Let's get to it. Enjoy.
Well, I'm really excited in today's meeting with Chris Fletcher, who is the golf course superintendent or director of grounds?
Head golf course superintendent.
Oh, head golf.
Yeah. Just call me a golf course superintendent. That's good with me.
I like it. And one of the most fascinating talked about new design builds in the East Coast and really probably the country at Old Sawmill with Tyler Ray. And I've been following along, and anybody that's been following on, you've seen some pretty unique, bold designs. But Chris, welcome to the podcast. And for those that don't know you, why don't you give us a background on who you are and how you kind of got through the industry?
Well, thanks for having me on, man. Glad to talk to you again. This is my, 27th year on a golf course. I grew up on a huge farm in the middle of Kentucky, played golf all through high school, got offered a golf scholarship after I walked on it at a local school in my hometown, and then was actually going to go to med school, believe it or not. I was on that route, and it just, it just wasn't my thing, and started researching jobs, and I went to University of Kentucky, ended up working for Curtis James during the Bill Groen at Old Stone, worked with him and Wyatt Warfel.
Hold on there. Wait a second here.
Yeah.
A Curtis James referral testimonial in the podcast. That's we've got to change subjects here. So tell me about this. This could be the rest of this conversation.
Yeah, it could be. It was exciting. I didn't know at that time. I didn't know a whole lot about golf course maintenance other than what I watched on TV with my grandparents, as far as the Masters and the Open, the British Open and all that. So it was very eye-opening. It was extremely intense. As an intern, walking into that was, you're either going to make yourself or break yourself. And somehow, I made it through it. I somehow impressed them. They offered me a job to come back the next year. And I did and excelled again. It really kind of shaped kind of how I look at everything, the business, how I look at the agronomic side, how I look at kind of how I handle myself politically in the political environment. Curtis was great to work for. Definitely ingrained the hard work aspect. You got to do it in order if you want to reach a certain level. So, and that's kind of what he taught all of us.
It's interesting. And I've known Curtis fairly well over the last few years. We've worked with him on a few recruiting projects and obviously worked for very similar type people, a lot of shared friends in the industry.
Yep.
And it's rare to find somebody with as much passion as he really does for this industry. And I think sometimes is maybe misunderstood because of that passion, but in such a way, like he just really loves mentoring, coaching, teaching people. And I'm curious, like, as you kind of came up through the ranks, how vital that was for you coming up, but also in developing your own leadership style, your own mentorship style.
Yeah, he's been huge. I mean, all of us that worked on under him, at Old Stone, and then even when he left Old Stone and went to Windstone and then Old Elm. And I know a bunch of those guys that worked under him. I think all of us would say, and especially my experiences, is if I ever had a question about a job, he was usually the first guy that I called and asked. And he was also, if he heard about a job, he'd always extend that information. And like, the Old Sawmill job was one of the first to say, "Hey, great job, good job." So obviously he's super vital for any of us that have worked for him, know him, and his passion. I mean, if you can't handle his passion, it's going to be a struggle bus for you working under him for sure. So, but I would say the same about myself. I think I have a tremendous amount of passion, and that may scare a lot of people when they talk to me or chat with me, because I love it. It's what I've done. It's what I've grown to do well.
It's interesting. Earlier this year, we did a national study looking at workforce trends really across all different generations throughout the country. One of the big takeaways was people don't know this career exists and they kind of find it by second chance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You spoke to that, right? You were kind of going down a different pathway and then kind of came back into this. What drew you into the profession?
I think it was a little bit of just the knowledge that I had of golf. I had gotten to a point where I was pretty good. The college game killed me. I'm not a big guy, so I couldn't drive the ball 350 yards like everybody else. That part of it, and then just I think spending majority of my life on a farm, and seeing agronomics and seeing how my dad grew crops, how my grandfather raised cattle, and how it all kind of mixed mashed together there. I always enjoyed being outside, and enjoyed just didn't care if it was hot, didn't care if it was cold. And then, I think when you look at kind of the route that I was going, that medical career, that science based, that very technical part of it, it just kind of, it all mashed well together. And I was like, man, this might be it. And I really didn't, I always joke with people, if I wasn't doing this, I would probably have a head of 500 cattle somewhere in Kentucky doing what I was doing back then. So the science of it really drew me in the most, I guess, is what I would say, but also kind of, that love of golf that I had early on in my career.
I hear that a lot from today's search committee members, kind of talking about the importance of playing golf, and what they're looking for in a superintendent. I'm not certain I'm 100% bought in that you have to play golf at a high level to be a good superintendent. I've worked with so many people that know the game of golf, have a high golf IQ, but they're not that great. What's your perspective on that?
I agree with you. I look at Michael Hustis, who I worked for at Biltmore Forest. I can't remember his handicap. He was 9 or 10 handicap, but he loved to play golf. He wasn't a 1 or a 2. And I'm definitely not a 1 or a 2 or back then. But I think just having the knowledge and skill of looking at it through, a normal member's perspective. I mean, as well as I know, and everybody else knows, that majority of your memberships aren't going to be the 1, 2, 3 handicaps. You're dealing with, tens, nines, tens, and 12s most of the time. So I think it's kind of refreshing that most people see that, your golf game's similar to mine, and I kind of see how the ball can react in certain areas to either help you or harm you in certain things. And I think that it's important that we see those and we acknowledge them as we go through kind of our planning practices through the year.
So moving forward, you worked for Curtis and then kind of continue on your career journey from there.
Yeah. So after that, I went to Louisville, Kentucky, I got in on the end of a renovation at Big Spring Country Club, worked for this awesome dude named Bob Rogers when he was there. From there, went to Sage Valley and worked for Chuck Green, one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. And then after that, went to Belle Reve and worked with John Cunningham. And then after that, Biltmore Forest. I spent the last 5 years at Biltmore Forest with Michael Hustis, and then went and got my first superintendent job at the Standard Club in Atlanta. So long ride, and then here.
I mean, those are some pretty incredible people and places. What drew you to Old Sawmill?
On the area, I'll say that when my wife and I lived in Aiken, Augusta area, and I worked at Sage Valley, we didn't have kids then. So a lot of times when I had a full weekend off, we'd go to Beaufort or Hilton Head or Charleston area every time we could. And we just love the environment here. We love the people. We always talked about missing the scenery, especially when we moved from that area to St. Louis. It's polar opposites. And that was one reason. Tyler Ray would be another reason. Then just, the way, and Tyler, I don't know if you talked to Tyler a whole lot, but everybody that knows Tyler knows that he's extremely passionate about whatever project he's talking about. And so when he first asked me about this whole thing, and I was like, okay, well, what is it about? And of course, he's just, man, it's bold. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. So at that point, I'm like, all right, I gotta at least investigate it and try it. And here we are.
And I'm not super familiar with grass schemes, things of that nature. Talk us through that. What's the design style? What grasses you maintain? And give us some flavor on that.
So primarily the whole course is TifTuf Bermuda grass, and greens are TifEagle. The thing about Old Sawmill is we're going to be similar to a Sage Valley, a shoulder season club, open from October, November through mid-June. We'll close down, do all of our cultural practices, and then we may open for a month ahead of overseeding, August, September areas. The primary plant services that we're going to have are ryegrass and potriv. We'll probably oversee greens with bentgrass. And that was another thing that really attracted me. I really like that. I really like the overseeding and the managing of rye, and it gets me back to those Midwest days with Old Stone and bentgrass. So it's fun stuff.
And in terms of the type of member that you guys are trying to attract, talk about that a little bit.
Obviously, they're pretty selective and right now and who they want. Partnership's goal is to have members that build camaraderie. And, whether it's somebody that knows somebody straight out of the gate or personalities match, they're really drawn to personalities that kind of match. And so it's some of these national private clubs, members may not know anybody. You may get there and, like maybe two guys. Well, they want it to kind of be a big family, kind of a fraternity almost. Fraternity is probably not the greatest word in the world, but just building on the camaraderie that people can have and share as they play Old Sawmill.
We oftentimes will talk with candidates in our search projects about being an ambassador, for the department. I've heard this a lot from members, that they want their department heads to be true ambassadors and stewards for their clubs, right? So it sounds a little bit like at Old Sawmill, that camaraderie, stewardship of the land, of the resources, right? And of the game of golf seems pretty important. How do those thoughts cross your mind in terms of your role there, really kind of fundamentally being there at the start of this club, and kind of shepherding that moving forward?
Yeah. And I've thought about that a lot, actually, especially over the last few months as we get closer and closer to opening. Your mindset when you break ground is 150% just get to the finish and let's go. But as I kind of start to build the pieces that we want at the assistant level, at the equipment manager level, and so on and so forth, that's something that really for me has taken up a lot of headspace. And how I look at things is, when we open, I want to be the ambassador for our team. I want to go to members and say, hey, man, good morning. How are you? Welcome to Old Sawmill. Hey, is there anything we can help you with? Is there, and then talk to them after their round and say, hey, man, I'm a pretty personable guy. I don't, I'm not too politically correct all the time, but, definitely at the end of the round, go, hey, is there something, I can pass on to my team that good or bad, be honest. That's where I want to go in my career, because I've always kind of been just the guy running everything. And this is where I want to go and kind of broaden my leadership, managerial skills, however you look at it, is then, now start to like, all right, elevate my game to elevate everybody else's game. And, and then even on the broader stage outside the club, once, definitely want to look into trying to be a better ambassador or a really good ambassador for the club, my team. So overall,
we've obviously chatted before about staffing and some of the uniqueness challenges that you'll deal with there, but talk us through building from the ground up. An entire department would have been some of the fun challenges with that? What makes it unique, and just kind of describe your approach thus far?
It's a challenge. It's very, I will say it's very stressful. I was lucky that I had two good assistants at the standard club that wanted to come. And then we added another piece. And then just from there, then trying to build a staff level. We started out, we opened a par three a year ago, probably a year ago, November. We don't need that many guys. My assistants themselves and five guys can handle a par three every day. And then, now we're at a staff level of hourly, we're probably 25 to 27 people. We have two current assistants. We've hired one equipment manager, and we're currently looking for a senior assistant. And it's tough, navigating the turf net world and trying to send out feelers and ask guys, hey, you got anybody? But I think with the senior assistant position, we're going to take as much time as we need to find the person that is right for the job, that can, stand behind me, and I can help bring them up and elevate them as we elevate the clubs. But overall, man, it's been stressful at times, but it's also been a lot of fun watching people come in and get acclimated and build and grow.
And when you talk to young assistants, individuals that potentially come on your team, what advice do you give them, and what things do you talk about? What'll be unique opportunities for them at Old Sawmill, maybe versus other traditional type settings?
A lot of times, I like to talk about, building for the future. You're going to come to Old Sawmill. I don't really like boasting myself very much. A lot of times, so I'm usually very discreet about, like, you come in, you work for me for 3 years, I can get you anywhere. No, I want somebody to come in, work for 4 or 5 years, and observe how I handle things, and then in certain situations, I'm going to tell you, this situation deserves this attention, and this situation deserves this amount of attention, and learning the priorities of managing a very large property. I also try to talk about, growing in a golf course twice a year. You go through the overseed, and then you go through the transition of overseed to Bermuda grass. A lot of times you just don't know what it's going to be like. Early on when we were recruiting guys, it was kind of fun because I could sit back and joke with guys and say, we're either the smartest people in the world or the absolute craziest people in the world, because we're going to grow in a golf course twice after construction in 1 year. So that's something that usually triggers guys' mind to go, man, that's a cool opportunity. Let's go for that. My big stress is just how I can mentor guys.
I love it. And I'm assuming talk a little bit about maybe some of the unique agronomic challenges there, the terrain itself, things that they might be exposed to that, again, would be a little bit untraditional at a place like, Old Sawmill.
The soils are extremely tricky. Our base soil for fairways and approaches, rough areas, is a combination of because the place itself was just a big farm. It was a livestock farm, and then it was also forage crops. So one part of the golf course, the soils are completely different than the backside. And you can see in how they react with certain, nutrients that you apply, both wind, both water, both rain and heat. Very fine. So we have I can't remember. It's a silty, sandy loam, and it perks at 0.2 inches an hour. So when I talk to guys about what we have, I'm like, it's either concrete when it's dry or it's pudding when it's wet. But that's why we have as much 2-inch drainage and the type of drainage infrastructure that we have on the club. So I tell them it's a mismatch of stuff. That's one of the struggles we're always going to deal with. Yet to see what it really does as we continue to move through our process.
Again, and when I talking with different golfing members, people within the superintendent community, there's always a lot of talk right now about just different innovation technologies that are used. Anything that you guys are implementing from just the grow-in standpoint, not necessarily, autonomous mowers or GPS sprayers, things of that nature, but any other new technologies from a construction standpoint you guys are leveraging?
During the greens construction, obviously, one of Tyler's big things that I haven't done before in any other greens construction is using this turf scan. And basically, Tyler put the green together with a dozer, and did all the little finite details on the surface. And then Total Turf came in and scanned the green, and then cored it out and built the green according to the scan after Tyler did his tweaks. So that was a really cool process. And actually, it's phenomenal. One of the cool things about it is, we had some rough weather early this year, late last year, that where, some greens cavities just got completely, boom, washed out. Total Turf had to do was go back and put the green back according to the scans that they spent so much time doing. So that was something cool to me. I had never been a part of it. But as far as from an agronomic standpoint, right now we're kind of keeping it simple, stupid, moisture meters and those kinds of things. But yeah, the scan thing, man, I love that.
Don't give Greg too much credit, Greg Huffner, too much credit there, but I'm just kidding. Greg's a good friend. We both have roots in the Philadelphia market, so it's exciting to see all the work that those guys are doing. I'm sure you've over time you've learned to work with different architects, contractors, and that's such a key piece I find in the design build, new construction, is just having those relationships. Talk a little bit about that, sort of as you were developing those skills and the importance of that kind of prior to Old Sawmill.
Yeah, I go all the way back to Old Stone and getting to meet Drew Rogers and being around Curtis and Drew Rogers and seeing that interaction. And then, I went to Louisville and was at the tail end of their small renovation there and got to meet Bryce Swanson with Reese Jones. And it's funny, Sage Valley, I don't remember the associate architect that I worked with there to read that. We redid 17 whole completely. We redid parts of 18 green and some other stuff. But I do remember meeting Mr. Fazio, and he was quite an impressive individual. But I would say when I got to Belle Reve is really when I learned the importance of that contractor, architect, superintendent relationship. We got to work again with Bryce Swanson. Back then it was Total Golf Professional Services, I believe, and being immersed in that and being with Bryce pretty much all the time and the contractors, that experience gave me a lot of confidence going into this from the ground up, getting to meet Dave Gandell, who was the project manager for Total Turf on our property, who's probably one of the smartest construction guys I have ever met in my life. But being able to, be the kind of a mediator between him and Tyler sometimes, and then also, GTI, the irrigation contractor. Obviously, your head's got to be on a swivel all the time. But I would say if I didn't have the experiences that I had throughout my assistant career, there's no way that I would have been able to handle all of the chatter and then all of the, managing all of the other, getting information from one person to the next. But I will say that Tyler and Total Turf together was really good. Tyler's obviously, I think very highly of Tyler, but I also think very, very highly of Total Turf and Greg Huffner and what those guys have done with their careers. What they did at Old Sawmill was fantastic.
Well, excited to see this project kind of continue to come to life and all the recognition that you and the team there is going to get. I want to transition into a more of a lighthearted conversation we like to call chip shots. So,
all right.
If you had to pick your favorite foursome, who would it be with and where at?
Geez, I would say Arnold Palmer would be one. My grandfather, J.D. Montgomery, would be two. I would say Matt Kuchar would be an oddball, and that would be it. I think that would be my foursome. And then where? Essex County Club.
Shout out to Eric Richardson, golf course superintendent, by far one of the most unique Donald Ross properties in the country.
Yeah, I've always wanted to take a trip up there to visit it. I see, I was one of those architect nerds early on where I would get on Golf Atlas and stare at pictures of Essex County all day long. That place is unbelievable.
I think we might be able to hook you up on that one, Eric. And just one of the best, best people in this industry. So I like that one. That's a good one. What's your favorite hole at Old Sawmill and why?
Number 5. Number 5 is a lengthy par 4. It has 2 different sets of tees. It'll have kind of an everyday member tee, and then it has an alternate set, and it's two incredibly different looks. But what I love about it is that the way Tyler designed it, the bunkers stack on top of each other throughout the hole to the pinnacle of the green, and the green sits elevated above the approach, and it just has that wonderful infinity look. I'll be honest, a lot of times I'll go and sit by, there's bunkers before you get to the green, and you kind of sit in the valley that he created looking up to the green, and it's just all you can see as far as you want to really on a clear day. That by far is probably my favorite hole.
Nice. Let me ask, and this is a wild card. So you worked for John Cunningham. Did you ever have to do a predictive index assessment?
I did. I think I did it twice.
What's your personality profile?
Oh man, I don't even remember. I don't remember it all. Actually, that was so long ago. I can send it to you. It's in my jump drive. I guarantee it.
I like it. What's one of the biggest takeaway lessons you learned in leadership from all the guys that you learned for? Like if there was one thing that has carried with you, to this day.
Man, I'll be honest. I learned a little bit from everybody. I think, Curtis's drive and his grit, determination. I would say Bob was very humble in how he approached leadership. Chuck was direct, what you need to be. And Cunningham, I learned more about managing a boardroom in a committee meeting than I ever thought I would have from anybody else. And then, Michael just as even killed as anybody ever seen in a green committee meeting. His voice never went up. His voice never went down. The way he looked at individuals, the way he answered questions, everything that I learned in a green committee meeting or a board meeting with him, I took directly to the Standard Club. And I would say between him and John, that was probably one of the things that allowed me to be as successful as I was there. So I can't thank Michael enough for who he was and how he helped me.
That seems like a pretty good one to end on. So if people want to learn a little bit more about you, learn a little bit more about Old Sawmill, where can they find you?
Well, I have a Twitter account, but I'll be honest, I'm not the most socially active guy in the world. If you want to know a lot about me, you just call Michael Custis. He can tell you a lot. But I got email, phone number, all that.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leadership on the Links. For more leadership insights and industry expertise, connect with us at bloomgolfpartners.com or follow us on social media sites LinkedIn and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode of Leadership on the Links, we'd be thrilled if you'd leave a review or share it with someone who you know would get some value. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay updated. Thanks for joining us today.